Um, Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for January 14th, 2022. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating, and also present are Henrique Mendez, who's sharing his screen, Aaron Mikhail, Andre Matheus, Gabor Hotzi, Offer Schall, Ralph Kohler, and Thomas Howell. As usual, I don't think any of us are officially usability experts, but we do have a wide range of backgrounds, and that's very helpful for usability discussions. And Henrique, tell us about the issue you'd like to talk about.
Okay, so here's the issue 3114813. Admin report menu items are not sorted. This issue initially they reported accurate about sorting the issue, the menus items in the report menu, but actually we had a few comments here saying that it was not intended to be alphabetically sorted. So we had the recent log message at the first, and in Drupal 7, I think, we had also the status report menu in the top of the page. So the question would be what we should do about this issue, if we should put the status report back to the top of the page, or we should close this as work at design or something. I don't know. We also had another issue about sorting this. I think this one. Let me see here. Yeah, we also had this issue. I think it's related to it. So, any ideas?
Can you read the issue number of the related issue for the sake of the recording?
Send it in the chat. What is the chat? Okay. Yeah.
So for the sake of the recording, the issue number that you started with is 3114813, right?
Yeah.
But what's the related issue you brought up?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
You brought up another issue that's related to the one we're talking about.
Okay, is that one 2695177? I sent in the chat. Actually, there was idea of the web check, I think. That she said, I think the reason because we are using weights as the only two available for what we really want. Okay. Yeah, and she said she told you a few possible options. They should close this at design or move the status update, start report actually, back to the top of the page. So we basically need to decide if we should close this or send a patch, putting the status to report back.
So it seems to me, and I've looked at it before. I was on that usability meeting when WebCheck posted the comment. It seems that just sorting it alphabetically is the wrong solution, that we've intentionally put some things near the top of the list, and we should not undo that. And we might want to make some tweaks. Maybe the status report should be near the top of the list. But just going back to straight alphabetical sorting, which is what the issue title suggests, is not the right answer. So
is there a way to know? Sorry, I'm sorry for interrupting, but is there a way
I'd sort of
know
like to close it as works as designed. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just ask if there is a way to know which of these topics are most accessed, so we could sort them by the order of they are usually accessed.
It's going to be very difficult to tell because it would be on a case-by-case basis. One type of site builder is going to use log messages almost daily, where someone else may go and have either a tool or read the log files on the file system itself. So there's how you use that interface is going to be very specific. And I wonder how many people even use this overall. So I tend to agree with Benji that this issue, like the things that are near the top, that field list is important. Maybe available translation updates doesn't belong as high in the list because that's more use case specific. So it's only going to be if you have translations. But the entire list of reports itself, there's a lot of site builders who don't use these. So it's really hard, even with usability testing, like how you identify the audience that will care about the order is going to be challenging.
I don't know if it's possible or probably out of scope of everything. The status report page went through an overall and made it very nice and readable with icons and structure. A list like this could be done in reports so people can find easier ways to read the list. But I don't know if that's possible, or if we need a graphic designers to get there to figure that out.
Yeah, that sounds like something the Claro team might be able to help with. But I think that is kind of we would, if we had, if we asked the Claro team, like, hey, can you, is there a better pattern you can come up here, like more of a, maybe like, as you said, grid with icons, something like that, then we would want to design that and then see if we could apply it, because we'd obviously want to make that, see if it could be done so that other places could take advantage of it. So that potentially is its own issue. How to make these lists more, can we design some alternatives or something?
Right, and in Enrique's comment at the bottom of the page, number 28, he again has a link to an issue that deals with that, which I think that link was mentioned, that issue was mentioned earlier in an earlier comment, but there's 2695177, which she's also shared in the Zoom chat. Visual and structural hierarchy, ways to emphasize admin items over others. The other thing we might do, either as this issue or as a separate issue, is move the status report back to the top. Other than that, I don't think we should make any changes on this issue. And someone asked, is it possible to find out which items are used most? I know that Angie or WebCheck often mentioned it would be nice if we automatically collected that sort of information, but we don't. So we're sort of using our own experience or possibly user testing, and we don't have real data on which items are used most.
Yeah, I would support moving status report to the top. Potentially the other one, which is I'm thinking of, I'm sure available updates is There's an available updates. I'm sure there was at one point. I'm just looking at a screenshot. I don't see it there, but yeah, I think there's ones that we could probably make educated guesses at are the most frequently used, and that would be like status report, then potentially like recent log messages. But then everything else could, in theory, be alphabetically ordered. The other thing to highlight is that this is all generated based on the menu system. So if this is like similar to the discussion around sort of the content editor, content manager roles. Like if we just need to provide sensible defaults here, because with this being generated based on the menu system, then a site administrator could be like, oh, okay, you know what, I want field list at the top, so they could just go into the menu structure and change that. So I think this is less a question of around what is the best option definitively and just what is a sensible starting point. And so for me, a sensible starting point is that, you know, things like, yes, status report, recent log messages should be at the top. Everything else can probably just be alphabetically ordered because they all have a sort of similar weight. Like if you look at those like, you know, top access denied errors, top page not found errors, those kind of things are really, they're nice, but I would probably make a pretty good guess that those are things people are not clicking on as much as status report.
Yeah, do we have a comment on the issue that explicitly points out that this is something that individual site administrators can change? I think you're right. It's under the administration menu. This is that's a hierarchical menu, and the reports section of that menu is what generates this list.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that available updates and recent log messages are moved to the top, and everything else is alphabetical by default. A site administrator can change those easily.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see available updates in another screenshot, so I wasn't going crazy. It does exist.
So
this is actually the report page actually. Availables update and then recent log message. A little bit different.
right, and the other thing, as long as you're sharing and you've got a Drupal site running, if you go to structure menus,
yeah. So that's it.
well, do we actually have consensus here? Can we sort of definitively say, let's either close this issue or let's move status reports back to the top? How many people are in favor of moving status reports back to the top? Also, Enrique, your comment says that you tracked down when that changed, that in Drupal 7 it was at the top.
I think in Drupal 7 it was in the top and Drupal 8 was removed from the top. I don't know actually why. During the last patch, it removes the weight from the status reports menu.
So that was done in was that an unintended change? Are you looks like? Because oh no, I guess maybe it was because it looks like it was part of a wider issue there. So yeah.
And Ralph mentions in the chat that he agrees with Aaron's suggestions. So again, do we actually have consensus here? Shall we just move status report back to the top and actually close out this issue, or or do we need further discussion? Or am I reading the consensus wrong?
I mean, it kind of sounds like nobody's objecting to that. So
Yeah, I also think that it's a good, easy to find place there, and it's kind of buried now.
like,
What-
sorry to clarify, do you mean status report being at the top made it easy to find?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Or stop sharing my screen.
Okay, so I'm going to call that a consensus. Enrique, would you like to update the issue with that?
Okay.
And also, as Aaron pointed out, the menu can be rearranged by the site administrator. It would be nice to have a screenshot of the page where those menu links are listed, just to sort of drive home the point that this is something that site administrators can change. I can do that if you're not sure how to do it.
Okay.
Anything else on this issue?
I think that's it.
Okay, Aaron, if you found that issue you wanted to talk about briefly?
Yeah, I did actually. Let me just.
Oh, and while you're doing
check
that,
my
let me
tabs.
point out a few more people have joined the call. Ben Mullins and Lauri Escola. Thank you for joining. And also I forgot to mention, especially since there are some new people on the meeting today, if it's easier for you to type than to speak up, I do keep an eye on the chat, the Zoom chat. So if you type anything in there, I'll read it in for the sake of the recording and other people's attention.
Okay, so this is issue 3258321. Cancel account button on user form trigger server side validation. This was brought up in I think it was in the Contrib Slack channel a while ago. I seem to have lost the ability
Aaron,
to scroll.
I'm not seeing your screen. Is that just
Yeah,
me?
I think
Yeah, it's a
the
black
window
screen.
is frozen. 1 second, and I'm not able to scroll anymore.
If you'll post a link to the issue, then I can share my screen instead. Maybe that'll.
Yeah, my whole screen is just frozen. So I think Zoom has just crashed my screen. I'll read the issue number again, and perhaps if you could maybe bring up that from the issue number, because I don't seem to be able to do anything on my computer right now.
Okay, just a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's 325
325
832 1.
832 1.
Yep.
Cancel it. Okay, I think let me share my screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. My whole screen froze after I hit share screen, I think. So I might have to also restart. So just if you're
Okay, can you see my screen now?
I'll just
No, still Aaron's black screen.
I
What's
can
that?
see your screen.
Okay.
yeah, I'll just mention. So I briefly I brought this up because it's an interesting issue, and I think there's general. I assume the general consensus will be that we basically do the user cancel button on the user edit form is actually a submit button, whereas if you go into, like, for instance, a node and you click on delete, that's a link. So the problem is that when you go into the user edit form, if you, for instance, there's kind of an example there of like, if you change the email address to a email address that a user that already exists, and then click the cancel account, you'll get an error message. So basically, by changing it to a link, this kind of avoids the and making it consistent with other core entity types, that kind of avoids the issue of the validation being triggered. So it's really, I wanted to share it because it seems like a small issue, but a good one to get progress from a usability perspective. But also if everybody thinks that changing it to a link to be consistent with other core entity types is a good idea, then I can also just post that on the issue and say that we have sort of agreement from the usability group that's a good way to proceed.
Okay, let me see if I can see what you're talking about here. So it's this thing down here that does look like a link, and you're saying that's actually a submit.
Yeah, so if you were to sort of take out like the username, for instance, like a field that's required, and you then click the cancel button, you would you probably hit up against that problem.
Yeah, it's definitely an input element. And I take out the email address and click cancel account. I have to put something back in the email address again before I can cancel.
Yeah, so my screen has just returned to me.
Oh, is
so
it the
that's
confirm form that you're referring to?
No, so it's the actual cancel account button, I believe, on the user edit form. Is apparently, it's not actually a link, apparently it's a button, so it'll trigger the validation.
Right. Thank you for joining us, Jess. Yeah, it's this page, the user edit form, and down at the bottom, it sure looks like a link, but my browser tools show me that it is actually an input element. Type submit, I think, yes.
Yeah.
Who knew?
So it sounds like that. I mean, the obvious kind of solution here, and hopefully a quick one, would just be to change it to be, as I said, to change that to be a link, which would then make it consistent with, say, Node and other core entity types. And then that way we avoid the issue of it triggering the server-side validation.
That sounds reasonable. I don't want to. Well, I suppose this being the usability meeting, we're not responsible for considering unintended consequences. We're just focusing on usability aspects on it. So maybe with that caveat, I think I can agree with you. That seems like the right choice.
Didn't Benji get the client side validation though?
I
Just
did.
now? Yeah.
So if I remove a required field and try to cancel the account, it complains.
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. You said client-side validation. And yes, that looks like client-side validation, not server-side.
Yeah, so in theory, if you disable JavaScript, you, at least according to the way the issue is worded, you would also get the server-side validation. I think browsers are clever these days.
I don't think we support full usability for JavaScript being disabled. There's entire user interfaces that are completely broken with JavaScript off.
Right.
But I think the form
Should we
shouldn't be
try the
validated.
exact? We should try the exact steps. Maybe.
Okay, create a user. So do I actually have to? Yes, I do actually have to create 2 test users to test this. And let's test one at example.com. I'll call it test1 and update that, and then add another user, test2. Test2. So now I have 2 users, not counting admin, and then edit the first user, change the email address, and hit cancel. So that presumably is how we get server validation rather than client-side validation. Test2 at example.com and cancel the account.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah.
To me, this honestly seems really minor, but
I guess there's also the accessibility issues with the button being an input rather than a link. It was already something we discovered when we worked on Claro.
yeah, that's
Right.
something that I was going to say too earlier, is I think this is more of, needs to be evaluated as an accessibility issue rather than a UX one.
But I think in this case, you know, the two, usability and accessibility, agree that you should not style a submit button as a link.
I think the question is, like, you know, like you said, the thing about consequences is the usability regression strong enough to risk breaking disruptive, like huge disruptive changes to core? Maybe not, but if it is the accessibility problem, could be, probably. So that's why I think that it's important to, like, if it is actually like bad accessibility to have the link be secretly an input field, which was my gut reaction also, then that's the reason that we should do the issue. And that's the reason that, you know, even if it is disruptive and breaks stuff potentially, because like, you know, this will break form alters, blah, 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 in addition to whatever else might happen.
Oh, and I promised to keep an eye on the chat. I see that Offer has posted a link to a Drupal pod with this issue patch applied. And Andre asked whether non-core issues can also be reviewed on these meetings. Yes, the agenda is determined by the people who attend the meeting. So that can include individual sites from time to time, and certainly contributed modules. But we usually talk about core issues. So to Jess's point, I think that usability is probably not enough of a reason for this issue, but it is certainly not a blocker for the proposed resolution. And accessibility may be enough of a reason for this issue.
So I guess what I could say, if I post a comment on the issue, what I could say is from the perspective of the usability group, that there's no concerns about changing it to a link. And then it leaves it up to any other sort of functions of core or Drupal to weigh in on whether it's a good idea.
And I would put the accessibility tag on the issue because it's an accessibility improvement, probably, too.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I can flag it in the accessibility channel as well.
And I mean, in fact, the accessibility thing might almost be enough to change it from a task to a bug, potentially.
Right. And I guess there's from, there's probably the perspective of aligning this with, aligning user with like node and other core entity types where the delete button on a node is actually a link as well. Well, not a usability thing necessarily, but just a sort of a nice.
But are they links or are they all secretly input buttons, styleless links? Like, I actually don't know right now. I think they might all be secretly input field styleless links. So this is more than just users. The user is just an example of how you trigger the server side validation instead of the client side.
Yeah, we can find out.
All right, I'm testing
Yep.
it right now.
Oh no, it is a real link.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's
Save in
definitely
preview or
funky.
input elements.
How did we end up with that?
I suspect, like many things, weird things, it's possibly a hangover from the good old days of Drupal 4 or 5, maybe.
I mean, 2 buttons was actually the norm until Drupal 8, I think. I remember when we added the delete links instead of buttons. So we obviously cheated when we did that. Anyway.
Maybe someone did a find or replace and didn't check for cancel account.
Okay, I think we're done discussing this issue. Any further comments? And Aaron, I think you'll post a comment.
Yep, no, happy to do that. And it does sound like we have some kind of agreement, so that's good.
Great. So let's see. So a few more people have joined since we started discussion. Are there issues you'd like to bring to our attention?
Yes,
I posted a new issue on that issue. I'm sorry, I joined late and commented also late on the issue, so I was not there before the meeting started.
On this issue?
It was the meeting notes issue, the one that you just had open. I'm happy to also take over the screen share to present that.
Okay. I will stop sharing and let you do that.
Yeah, I'll do that. So for anyone watching the recording, I'm Lauri Escola-Lauri presenting this issue from Drupal.org with node ID 3222757. The issue title is Make Image Alt Text Required, and the context for this is CK Editor 5. So in CK Editor 4, images are uploaded through this dialog, and when you upload an image here, you can't save this without adding an alt text or explicitly declaring that you don't need an alt text by adding double quotes in the alt text field. In CK Editor 5, the image upload works slightly differently. You can drag and drop images to the CK Editor, and you can also press a button to open just the file browser, and it will immediately then upload the image and show that the image is uploaded on the CK Editor preview. So there's a regression from the CK Editor 4 to CK Editor 5 that at the moment, the alt text is not required. So it would be quite easy for a user who is entering content to Drupal to forget to add the alt text, even in cases where it could be helpful. So we are trying to make it required so that there's a step when you upload images where you're required to explicitly confirm that this image doesn't need an alt text, or that they write the alt text for the image. And so one of the approaches that the issues is proposing right now is that we keep the image upload process as it is, but we immediately after you've uploaded those images, the form field becomes invalid, in the set because of the alt text is missing from images, and it's going to prevent the form from being saved, and it using some methods declares that the images are not valid because they're missing the alt text still. This styling that has been done here is very temporary because of it was done for demonstration purposes, that this is something that could be done. I posted some concerns on that approach, which I'm not sure other people would share, but I was concerned that it could be potentially confusing from UX perspective for the form become invalid right after uploading images because of you are not displayed any additional form inputs. So it's not very obvious and clear that you were required to enter additional information for the image to be valid for sort of the proposal that I had was that we would open a dialogue for the alt text to be entered after the upload, but that has some issues with uploading multiple images at once. It could be, first of all, it could be complex to implement something where you have a multi-step dialogue where you enter the alt text for all of the images. But also just opening a dialogue might not be the ideal approach. Something that could be better is that we just open the CK editor contextual toolbar where the alt text is usually being entered. But that obviously doesn't work very well with when uploading multiple images. So I guess the questions that we have then is, do we think that are there any concerns in the UX where once you upload images, that right after the upload, if you don't show the form, the form field is in sort of an invalid state where you can't save it, and we show immediately that you're missing information from this, and you have to manually then know that you need to add the alt text.
Sorry, go ahead.
That could be potentially mitigated, that we could, so instead of this call, we could show a text that alt text is required, or something that makes it obvious that it's alt text that is missing, or would an approach where we show the dialogue and the form be preferred, or something else?
Is it possible to place the input field instead of the school? Like to directly type without the need to click, like to click and then open so you want to click and then open the input and then click on the input to type the alt text?
So this would be a button to add the alt text or text that would recommend adding the alt text.
It's an idea.
We might be able to do something like that. That's not sort of part of the CK editor built-in mechanics or UX, but it could be something that we could add on top of if that's the preferred approach.
So like the alt text would be, we would sort of like move the separate dialogue to be like laid over the image. Is that the proposal? And then if you drag multiple ones, yeah. And we could even do things like
each image would have. Yeah, that's the idea that I have.
I don't really like the idea of having a separate way for entering alt text that only shows up at this point. I'd like to continue using the usual way of entering alt text. And I think that a status message at the top of the page saying that alt text is required for all images would be pretty helpful.
A status message before you submit the form, because I'm pretty sure, Larry, are you running Benzamar or so?
This is Benzamar.
Yeah, so if you commit, it'll get it should theoretically fail to validate, right? Or does it not? Oh, so it does save. Ooh, that's interesting. So we
Yeah, it
could
should not
either show an
save.
error there. I think we meant for it to show an error, a warning that you couldn't save
Yeah.
there. So that's a bug right now in the MR. But then, you know, the question is, should we display that warning like when the image is uploaded instead of like not, so it's not a dialogue that interrupts the user's content editing process, which is a concern Win had, but you still do see a message that this node isn't valid to save. And so you're aware when you take the action that it has to be changed before you save, which it's supposed to.
Yeah, and which is a new concept for Drupal, which is that you can have that we validate the actual content of the unstructured data. And that could lead into form validation errors.
So I think I'm thinking about the process of when you use media and media library. So you click a button, then you upload the media, and then you get a form that yep. Yeah, so then you get a form, right? You can enter alt text, and that's really clear. Like I need to enter, there's a big box here, enter alt text, like save and continue, you know, or if I have multiple images, like, or, you know, media, they'll all kind of appear as a list there. And that's a really clean and nice way of doing it. I worry that if we just had a little sort of box that popped up instead of the skull and crossbone, which I thought was quite clever. But it might be easy to miss that. So, but I don't know, again, I'm thinking about, I know CKEditor 5 is very different from what we were doing with CKEditor 4. So I don't know how much, within reason, how much flexibility we have here to display some kind of more obvious dialogue or like input area.
I think the only difference is that CKEditor 5, aside from the media case, no longer has dialogues. Like,
okay, is it just like those pop-up things that we saw earlier? Okay.
Like all of, to my knowledge, all of the modal dialogues are gone, but like the media interaction does still exist, I think.
Sure.
So
this is all custom by Drupal. So we can build something like this if we think that's a better UX for this.
It might be. I'm also thinking of like, you know, consistency with how, because we want to keep it fairly consistent with how the rest of the editor behaves. So like, if you were to add a link, what would you get when you add a link to a piece of text there? Okay, so you just get that. Okay.
Ralph, do you have something to say?
Let the others finish first, but I had another idea. I could append it afterwards.
Go ahead.
Okay. Would it be basically possible in case there is one or more than one image without an alt text? On one hand, highlighting it is okay, but would it be possible, instead of the save button at the bottom, replace it in the state if alt text is missing, to basically open a modal and then place all little thumbnails and the according alt field to it, so that the editor is able to enter all the missing alt text at once in one single modal and then afterwards save it.
I think technically it would be possible, but it would be quite complex from the implementation perspective.
Larry, can you also demonstrate like a multiple drag and drop? Because I think that's the interaction where it would be really jarring and different, because that's, yeah. So this is the case that we really, you know, are like, what is right? So we just uploaded 3 images, and then you get a bunch of
Errors. None of them passed. I was uploading 2 large
they're too big.
images, I think. So if I take 3 small images
There we go.
now,
Yeah, so now we have to enter alt text for all of those. And we only did one thing to upload them, and we did a drag and drop. We didn't open the dialog. Does the dialog open itself? Is it just one of those pop-ups? Those pop-ups are required. Do we try to turn off the ability to close the little CK editor inline thing? Right, like.
Did you
we
get
could
any
validate.
feedback? Sorry, did you get any like feedback there when you tried to upload images that were too large, or did they just not appear?
I did get the error message.
There was a server-side error message that didn't explain what the server-side error was, but
Okay.
that's a side issue.
Yeah, I think that might be an issue. So I guess there's to me, it looks like the best way we can solve this is not just for alt text, but also for that issue of like you've uploaded something that's too large is to replicate what media does almost and open a model that's very clear, like here's the image, enter the alt text, and then it, like if we can intercept the upload process in that way, that to me seems like the cleanest and most sort of usable way to do it. Thinking also from like an accessibility perspective of we can then position the cursor, you know, at the right point when it's when you need to enter the alt text. To me, that seems like the kind of the best solution. Anybody else's idea there?
I'm not sure if everyone else hears Aaron, but you are a little bit roboty, at least for me.
Yes.
Yeah, his voice is
Fix that.
like a filter.
Aaron is having Zoom troubles today.
I could hear most of that. It was, yeah. So that's pretty close to the approach that I was imagining, that there's some sort of a dialog which opens up for filling the alt text. And maybe it could be just using the same approach as media is doing. If you upload multiple files that then they are all shown on one form at once. And maybe that's what we could do is we open one dialog which has alt text for each image.
Yeah, so that would be pretty close. That would be pretty close to what Ralph was suggesting, but instead of doing it when you try to submit the form, it would be triggered when you add the multiple images.
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty good user experience.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, the difference in
microphone fixed?
Yeah, it's fixed now.
Oh, great. Okay. Wireless headsets are fun.
That would be simpler for us to implement because it happens then before the images are inserted. It happens before the user has had a chance to interact with the images in CK Editor. So we can do it before the markup is in, before the initial import of the images has happened in the editor. So for that reason, it would be easier for us to implement it on the upload time compared to doing it on the save time, when the images could be in various positions in the editor and they could have been edited by the user.
Yeah, so I think also like another aspect is the cognitive load of, like, if you have a really big article and you've uploaded a lot of images and then you go to save it, and then you have to go find the images that need alt text to edit them, like that's a lot more intensive than just adding the alt text when you're in the context of like, I've just dragged and dropped these 3 images. I know what the alt text needs to be. Like that's a lot simpler of a workflow if you're a content editor, and the cognitive load there is a lot less. And if it's if it's easier to implement, then bonus, right?
Yeah. So what we could also do is that we don't open the dialog when you open just a single image, then we would open this view. Would that make sense as an optimization if it would be easy for us to implement?
You're saying for a single image, show this for the alt text rather than something custom?
Yeah. So basically you would see the image being uploaded and then you would see the text like this toolbar being opened.
I think there's a risk, and speaking as a sort of sight impaired user, there's a risk that I might miss that. Whereas like a dialogue that's right in my face, I'm not going to miss that, you know?
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and I want to respect people's time. We are getting close to the top of the hour. So we have a couple of minutes. Can we wrap up the discussion of this, decide what our next step is?
Do we have any concerns on the dialogue-based approach?
I don't. I think it's a pretty good solution.
Yeah, the only drawback was that it was not consistent with this interaction right here, but because the interaction already exists for media anyway, then it's not completely unfamiliar to the user anyway. Unless we change media, which I don't think we're going to do before release.
Okay, it sounds like that's something that is probably worth at least investigating more, and then the optimization of single image upload and all of that, we can then sort of, that can be a second step for us to figure out in future.
Great, and you'll post a comment with a link to the usability meeting?
Yes.
So by dialogue approach, you mean dragging and dropping still opens a dialogue even if you didn't open one?
Yes.
Right, okay.
And if you uploaded multiple images, all of them would be visible through a similar UI as the media library is using.
Okay, and we are at the end of the hour. So thank you all for coming. Feel free, of course, to comment on the issues, and I hope to see many of you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.